Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of my glorious gourds. I don't know. Hi, I'm Paul. How's it going, everybody? And with me is my co-host, Alejandro.
How you doing, Mr. Goldilocks?
I'm doing well, Mr. Big Bad Bear. I don't know. I merged Big Bad Wolf and the Three Bears in my head. Oh gosh, I've watched Shrek too many times. Anyway.
But by the way, remember real quick before you move on.
Yeah,
remember what I said about me doing No Shave November?
Yeah,
Look at this. Only a week.
Glorious.
Already back.
That's stuff.
Wait until yes.
Go away.
And you'll see in a few weeks how much bigger it gets.
I'm looking forward to seeing how great of a beard you can grow within this month, because I don't know if I've seen you go beyond a certain point.
During quarantine last year, I did. Yeah, and
we also took a break from our podcast, so I didn't see you very often.
Yes, and we didn't even see each other because we were not doing video. It was just some pictures I sent.
Good point. Also true. And this has been a nice little change of pace with being able to actually talk and bounce off each other. So, Alejandro, have you been playing anything?
Briefly, some new stuff and still being chained to some old stuff. So like for the new stuff, like just recently, like just last night, I started playing Forza Horizon 5. That is like the new Xbox exclusive. Got to play it a little bit on PC, and I tell you, I'm not much of a racing guy. I have dabbled here and there. Wow, this Forza Horizon game, I tell you, there's something special about it. Not just visually, but in its feel. I feel like you have a PC, right?
I do.
And you have Game Pass. You should try to download it. And
it's on Game Pass?
Yeah, it's on Game Pass. Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of Game Pass, and Xbox still committing to day one releases, even though they did an early access period, so the whole day one thing got muddied. Like, you know how sometimes they sold the $99 version. If you want to play it now, like 4 days early, buy this version. But if you want to be the measly $60/$70 peasant, you're gonna have your day one like 5 days later. They did this thing where if you had Game Pass Ultimate, they gave you a $45 quote-unquote upgrade for you to get that $99 version, so you can start playing it earlier, despite the fact it's still being on Game Pass. It's this whole weird thing. It's like Microsoft is the only one that kind of like Ubisoft and other ones, they love doing the early access thing. I actually did that for Gears of War 4 back in 2016 because I was like, a friend convinced me, like, let's start playing it now. And god damn it.
Well, my question to you then is, what is the point of buying these different versions of it if you can just get it on Game Pass for free?
So in this one was just for you to basically get a cheaper version of the $99.99 version. That's what it is, even though you're still subscribed to Game Pass.
Got it.
And what's scummy is that even though you pay those $45, if you stop paying for Game Pass, you won't have access to the game, which is weird. It's a whole can of worms. So basically, you're just paying $45 to start playing 5 days earlier, which is, it's not worth it. I mean, especially if the whole point of playing on Game Pass is that it's free, quote unquote.
Unless you know it's going to go away one day, or you're not going to have Game Pass.
So and that's the thing. Like with Microsoft first party, there is no. They usually older games are always there. Here's the only exception though. Forza games are the only ones that they have been rotating out because of licenses.
Really?
Because every time you do a car game, every car you put in, you need to they need to renew the licensing because they always have a newer version of the game. That's why they always keep delisting older versions, because you got a new one. And
okay, so
logically,
the newest will always be there, but they'll delist the old. Okay, well that's more acceptable. And I know that's why Need for Speed is always going to live in the shadow of Forza now, because they took away a lot of the licenses because they don't want their cars running from cops.
And Need for Speed is crap these days. It's no longer the tour de force for the arcadey car racer it used to be.
Even Heat apparently.
I tell you, like in Forza Horizon 5, like the arcadey car physics are so finely tuned. Wait until you do like a race in off-road, like in off-road, just rocky terrain.
Honestly, if I remember to later today, I'm gonna try to get that downloaded on my PC, plug up my little game controller, and
Yeah, especially with the Xbox controller, so easy to plug in.
Yes.
And I tell you, like, it's also available on Xbox One, but I can't imagine it doing it justice these days. I mean, we have been playing Halo.
Not on base.
And
No.
even on base Xbox, like especially playing through Halo 3 as we have been playing, which we returned a little bit, and I should be posting part 2 soon, and we should be playing for part 3 so we can be done with
So
it.
it's
It's like the base Xbox One is like now being 80 years old. It's finally at the point where it's like it's not worth it. So so I would say like just in a brief time that I played with Forza Horizon 5. Maybe it's because I haven't played a racing game in such a long time. That's
that could
why.
also play a factor.
Yes, but also look at the reviews of this thing. This thing has been reviewing insane. Even though Forza is always Xbox's most high-reviewed series since this past generation. They're the ones that critically have been carrying the baton, basically. And another thing, first-time experience that I played just briefly because I just got a little bit of time to kind of sneak in. Call of Duty Vanguard, which, by the way, I didn't buy. My brother bought, and he bought the PC version. So it was weird that my first experience with a new Call of Duty game is through the PC. Even though I played the open beta. I played the first mission on... Yeah, it was just the first mission of Call of Duty Vanguard, and this is Call of Duty. Oh, it's another one. And this one just... It's beautiful. Like there's something about these Sledgehammer Call of Duties that from detail, like all the way from Advanced Warfare and even World War II, which I recently replayed, they had this high amount level of detail and care. That it's what strikes you. But gameplay wise, I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna be too judgmental because I only played the first one. But this feels very by the numbers, and I don't know if that's just symptom of it being the first mission. Maybe it changes a little bit because I have to give credit where credit's due. World War II also starts very by the numbers, especially World War II throws into D-Day, and how many games have we gone through the invasion of Normandy in D-Day? And in that one was
defense. I can play through a first mission being D-Day like over and over again. I love that situation. But
but it's like that's the thing. It's a safe kind of beginning.
It is. Yeah.
The beginning of this one is not quite that bad. Yeah, I heard it's not that long also, so maybe by the time we record next week, we'll have blast through it. But the thing is that I only played the first mission because then the app crashed, and I can't open the game right now. There's like it's like grayed out where it says play, and I'm like, why? The thing's installed. Like, what the heck? So this is a reason why I'm not a PC gamer. That is precisely the kind of shit that I can't stand, because sometimes things can just go wrong and you don't know why, and then maybe it requires having
you to fix it.
Yeah, it's exactly. And that's why, yes, I understand that in PC, if you have a super beefed up PC, if you get a 3090 GTX, it's going to be it's going to give you performance far beyond what this current crop of consoles can even give you.
Right.
I personally don't give a shit. I just want the convenience and this
price.
yes, exactly. And the price, it's always going to be cheaper than a big ass PC. Glad for those people that can really invest, like our friend PJ. He recently invested on a 3080, I think he did. And that's a lot of money to invest, because not only that, because you have to also buy a PC and fan and all that to kind of withstand the graphics card. And I can see if you're really invested there, why would you even dare go to console?
Right.
That will never be me, because that's always going to be a sunken cost. And I feel bad for my brother that he's so up the PC's ass now, because he plays Warzone competitively, that he's been saving, like he's been playing tournaments, and he's been using the PC we used to I used to edit. He is the one that he plays there, enough so that he felt fine selling his own PS4 to invest in an own PC for him. So if he wants to know what a sunken cost is gonna be like, how often new graphics cards happen, and kind of that pressure if you really are playing competitively, and all the people that invest all this money because they always have to be in the high end, it's gonna be very expensive for him. Me, I am an old ass gamer. I have white temples. I'm from the N64 SNES era. That's where I grew up with. I don't need that. So I would have played more Vanguard if that crash hadn't happened. So
I have 2 questions for you just for Vanguard. One is, how would you say they have tackled the alternate history side, or is it almost non-existent?
can't really say with that first mission. I'll tell you more when I really go through it. So okay. I don't want to do like a misinformed. It feels it does feel like a more fictitious take on World War II in a way, like a more produced thing instead of like a more historical recollection, kind of like World War II, which was their previous game. But yeah, I don't want to definitely say much in worry that I'm gonna speak out of turn. But yeah,
just think about the opening mission to Wolfenstein New Order, and like the way they get you into the understanding of this is alternate history. Of you see the planes and you immediately know you are watching them flying towards this big fortress, and it says 1946, and you're like, oh.
And then you see robots, and then you see robots
like immediately into it, and you're just like, okay, so this is like big alternate history, but I would here for it.
Wolfenstein New Order is one of my favorite first-person shooter campaigns of all time, and especially it's a shooter that just kept getting better, because also one thing about that first mission, it's not very good. It's not that fun compared to what comes after you flash forward in that game.
Crazy stuff going on. Yeah.
And to me, I will always be shocked that a Wolfenstein game, especially that first one, has so much pathos, has so much great writing that you wouldn't expect that from freaking Wolfenstein, the ultimate. I am a Nazi murder machine. Let's just kill everything. I mean, the guy's called B.J. Blazkowicz, and in that game, I really
into the New Colossus. I think.
Oh yeah, even more.
Definitely stepped over the line, but New Order, like, just it had that back and forth of like, am I watching a really deep character drama, or am I watching a Fast and Furious movie? And I'm not really sure which.
Yeah, the New Colossus is the one that really goes for it. Yeah. Like, you beat that one, right? That middle section from when you go home onwards, man, that is like, it's such a roller coaster. You're like, wow, it's an escalation.
I can talk about that game, but
yeah, I just hate that it's so hard. The New Colossus it's too on. Like, it was a massive step back in gameplay compared to the first one. The first one felt more fair and finely tuned. So, but that's not the only thing that I have. That was my first time experiences playing something like just for this episode. I have also been playing some old games that have been completely dominating my time. I mentioned one of those last week.
Talk to us about the game that
Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. I finished Metroid Prime 2 Echoes last Sunday, and this is one of those experiences that, in equal fashion, I've never had a game that I've loved and abhorred in equal, like at the same time. It is that kind of sequel. It's definitely a sequel of one step forward, 2 steps back from its original, because I mentioned I beat the original Metroid Prime, and despite its age and me playing the GameCube version 19 years later, that game still holds up. There was barely anything in that original game that made me want to tear my hair out or think this is bullshit, this isn't fair. The final boss was a little hard, but it was fun to really beat, especially now knowing, since we played Dread, that a final super hard boss, maybe it's a little bit of a template in some Metroid games, not all of them, because in Zero Mission and Fusion I didn't find the final boss that particular hard, and hopefully one time you get to play that with your emulator.
And I'm still working through it.
Yes.
I've gotten further.
Yeah, so Metroid Prime 2, like, the 2 specific boss fights, the spider boss, it is called the Spider Guardian and the Boost Ball Guardian, they require a level of precision, especially when you're in Morph Ball, that I feel is way too loose and out of control for it to feel fun or satisfying. And what kills me is that I know there is a version of that game where Retro Studios heard the feedback, and they're like, we're gonna tune this. That happened in the pre-patch era, and that's exclusive in a version of a game that online is being sold for more than $100, almost $300 in specific cases. I'm talking about the Wii version of Metroid Prime 2, and I'm sad of seeing that that's a game where I'm seeing how well the design of its world and exploration was improved from the first game, but its pain points and difficulty makes me love it considerably less. I will be shocked if this isn't my least favorite of the Metroid Prime series by the end, like when I go through all of them, because I immediately then jumped into Metroid Prime 3, which I played before. Like I played that way back in 2007. Never beat it because, again, I mentioned I was young and stupid, and I didn't really understand the game's language back then, or how to properly always use maps, despite the maps clearly telling you, here is a question mark, go there. And also the problem with here's a problem with Metroid games. They have to be all you play. You can't take a break. You're gonna get lost. I did that because I was playing other stuff back then. Then when I went back, I was like, what was I doing? What were the mechanics? How am I supposed to get it? And then I got lost and lost interest. I'm not gonna do that this time. I'm gonna, just like I felt I was in this abusive relationship with Metroid Prime 2, where I just couldn't stop playing despite me at 1 a.m. just texting you all, fuck this game. Like literally all the time, you guys would always be waking up that, or every time that I would go to bed, I would always have those bullshit
like
moments.
2, 3 in the morning, I'd finally wake up normally, and I'd scroll through and I'd see like 24 missed messages, and I'm just like, oh, okay, so he's having like an experience here.
Yes. Yeah, and that's what I tell you, like, I wouldn't recommend you play that game unless you have the fortitude of frustration. And
I know more.
Yeah, and I don't think you want to. And I'm 3, but here's the thing, Metroid Prime 3 is so interesting because it's probably now, especially because I've gotten more experience with a similar series aesthetically with Halo. How much they took from Halo for Metroid Prime 3, with its emphasis on being in a galactic federation. You fighting sometimes with some soldiers.
When you were describing it to me, it sounded awesome because you were like going on this attack with like the other Federation soldiers, and you were talking about like the bounty hunting side of things.
Yes, because there's like you have a bounty hunter group there that you chat with, and what's sad is that they become corrupted and you have to kill them. Which really sucks. Like, but because in that first mission, you see how great. There's one that's basically Frozone from The Incredibles. His power is ice, and he's like sliding. And there's like a shapeshifter, and there's like a robot dude that gets into like a massive tank, like if he's the Iron Giant. And the shapeshifter one calls you Sammy. It's just so funny, even though Samus is still a mute. Everyone talks to her, and she's like staring, like just nodding and all that. That's always so funny.
Is this the first time we've seen other bounty hunters in the Metroid series?
I would say yes, because I haven't.
I'm thinking about it, and like all of this journey through with Samus being like the only one, but she's like listed as a bounty hunter. I'm like, in this world, what do other bounty hunters look like with like these almost magical levels of sci-fi tech? And that's really cool that they like really lean into that side of, all right, well, in this world, like other people have other powers as well that they've incorporated into their way of doing things. So that's really awesome that they did that.
Yeah, and not only that, like the Wii controls of that game are magnificent, especially coming from the one stick that you move and turn. In the other one, the only way to strafe was you holding the lock-on button, like if it was Zelda, because that's how they controlled in Metroid Prime 1 and 2. Worked well enough with the first one. I felt that control scheme got broken with the second one, with the kind of precision and difficulty was asking from you. With this one, just the ability to finally strafe normally with your left stick and aiming with the Wiimote, and how precise the Wiimote is.
It's kind of cool now that I think about it.
It really is, and it also makes me try to peek at the alternate history of pointer controls having become the standard for first-person shooters, like going forward. And I feel that didn't happen because Nintendo decided to do that in a way weaker hardware compared to the Xbox 360 and PS3. Imagine if the Wii had been just as powerful, relatively speaking, like the PS3 and 360 graphically, instead of being like a generation behind.
I mean, they would have not only sold the most, but not just grandmothers and mothers would have bought it, and like really, I would say competitive people would have played it more, because PlayStation tried with their little game gun thing, and Kinect was just an absolute dumpster fire.
Exactly. The PS3 and Xbox 360 kind of fell in backwards with that, and it's kind of sad because the level of precision that I'm getting with Metroid Prime 3 now, it's like it's so pinpoint accurate. It's so immersive. that I was like, yeah, this is one of the few ones that I'm like, yeah, this adds to the experience. This doesn't feel too tacked on. It's not like how I felt with Skyward Sword, that it tried to be more immersive, but its constant disconnections always took you out of the experience. And this one, it didn't need to do that. And that's what makes this experience that I'm really enjoying Metroid Prime 3 even more now. Now being in it now, it makes it more bittersweet knowing that maybe there's no way modern audiences can experience this because of how intrinsically tied that was to the Wii remote. And obviously there's the Switch that has motion control. In fact, I would even argue it has more precise because there's no need for the bar in the Wii.
True.
But you know how I sometimes feel like Nintendo is very lazy sometimes, especially when it comes to you just look at the work they did with Skyward Sword HD. That felt as minimal viable product as possible. Let's beef up the resolution, which automatically make that game look prettier, but it's still just it wasn't like a full-on remake like what we've been seeing with other things. And the half step they took to do the controls for people that didn't want to do motion controls and for it to work on the Switch Lite, I can't see. Like for example, they did Metroid Prime Trilogy on Wii. They added motion control aiming to Prime 1 and 2, and that was easy to do. But 3 was made with the precision in mind. Yeah. And it's not one that is like, okay, we can do that backwards. We can try to make it feel like Metroid Prime 1 and 2. The pacing of the combat, how many enemies are thrown at you, how quick the pace is as you go through tighter rooms. It doesn't feel like just going back to Metroid Prime 1 and 2 controls could work. So that's why I'm like, I have made peace with the fact that maybe people are never going to play this game ever again. They're probably, and that's sad to me because there's a really great game here. I don't know if it's going to be my favorite of this trilogy because the original one does feel the most closer to what Metroid is. The being alone in an alien world, eeriness, like it's a enchanting and atmosphere, creepiness. I'm not feeling that with 3 because a lot of people are talking to you. There's voice acting in the game. There's more combat to it, even though the combat's fun. But I would say after 2 was probably a misstep for them, even though a lot of people, do you know how there's the masochists that say, no, this is my favorite because of how freaking hard it was and how good it felt. I'm not the one that is like, this is good just because it's so hard and I beat it. I'm like, yeah, this sometimes is not as fun. This one is. And I can't wait to finally beat it and say that I finally beat all the Metroid series with the exception of Metroid 2. Paul, what have you been playing?
First and foremost, my first time experiences were Mario Party Superstars and First Class Trouble. I'm going to briefly talk on First Class Trouble first, which is the PlayStation Plus game that was given out this month.
Oh, okay.
It's the one that we saw in the State of Play, where it's like your 1960s style, but you're in a space station. It's more or less Among Us with added steps, where some of you are robots pretending to be people, some of you are actually people, and you got to figure out which one of you is the robot killing everyone else. I had a stunted progress with this because the game was completely broken, and we never actually got into a match.
Ooh. And it's free, right?
It's free. They're aware of the problem. There's something to do with the matchmaking / the servers, and it is not letting people go into it, but some can, and it just literally takes them about 10 minutes of waiting to actually get in. So me and like three or four of my friends all gathered together, and I will say it's kind of neat to sit on the main dashboard, and it's like a bar lounge area, and any characters that join in with you in your lobby are just like chilling out, chatting with each other, drinking martinis at the bar or whatever, and then you see like robots kind of floating in space in the background, a la Rick and Morty. It's a cool vibe to it, and I wish I could have played it, but outside of seeing like I enjoy the aesthetic and it looks polished enough in that vibe, there's a lot of cosmetic buying options, which has me like, man, they're really thinking that this is gonna be the game for some people, but I don't see it lasting very long unless they very quickly fix this problem. So on to the actual positive experience I had, Mario Party Superstars. So I haven't played a Mario Party game since I think 10.
Wait, you didn't play the Wii one, Super Mario Party? Oh, really?
I played like 2 and 3 back forever ago. I think I played like 6 for the GameCube. I played like 9 for the Wii
The Wii.
U.
No,
Or
9 was the
okay.
Wii. The Wii U one was 10.
Didn't they port that to the Switch?
No, the one that's on the Switch is Super Mario Party.
Okay, then I did play Super Mario Party because I played somebody's Switch version.
Then you play Super Mario Party.
Okay, so I had to play that once then. That was interesting because that was like sort of 3D at times, and you had to like get the grid just right to land on the spot. It was a little too much for me. They added a lot of bells and whistles, and then I realized what I was really looking for was just like a lot of other people apparently was original style maps that I like vaguely remembered because I played a couple of these.
Basically remake.
Yeah, but then like mini games, not just of specific ones, but like pretty much all of them. It's like got like not decades, that's years, dozens and dozens of these. From like stuff that I did actually remember, like you're standing on the ball and you're on top of a mountain, you have to hit each other off of the ball and all that stuff. It's just, it was classic Mario Party.
And the thing with Superstars is that this is a better version of a Nintendo attempt from years back where they did a 3DS version named this that was just the mini games. This is them doing that, but adding also boards, so it's a more complete actual Mario Party game.
And I realized that in the past, I really wanted that mode where you could just only play the mini games because that seemed like the most fun part of it. But then when you take away the actual board part of it, you realize that you're not actually getting the whole thing. It's like you're skipping straight to the dessert and then you're getting sick of it.
Yes. And with the board is where a lot of the Mario Party bullshit happens.
Oh yeah.
Like
that's what you come here for, which is where I was going to get into at some point. We played with my wife, 2 of her friends who are married, and their 7-year-old daughter.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so technically there were 5 of us, but only 4 of us, of course, had controllers, and we had each half of a Switch controller to split it between all of us. And the funny thing is like we gave the 7-year-old a handicap of 1 star at the start of the game, and she managed to circumvent the entire map about 5 times. And because the Star and Bowser locations flip-flopped to the same place every time, you could almost like line it up just right. And so we started up and she goes the wrong way and we're like, oh wow, this kid is gonna ruin it for us. And we didn't realize after a certain amount of turns it automatically switches, or if you land on the event square. So one of us of course lands on it, was me, and she gets the 2nd star. And then she comes back around, she goes the wrong way again, and she times it out just in time to land right in front of the star as it switches over. And so we are like battling with the 7-year-old for domination of the game. And of course, the mini games were hilarious because they you can choose like basic, all right, all the mini games, or you want skill based, you want luck based, you want certain things, or family oriented, where it's like I guess the easier ones. Which is awesome because when you're a child, you're like, good lord, I can't just mash this button as fast as everyone else can. This is garbage.
Oh, yeah.
So they still had a few of them in there that it was like, oh, I'm absolutely going to clown on everybody in this. But there were a few that it was like, oh, shoot, I don't know if I'm actually going to get this. And I lost a couple of them because of one thing or another, because I got too overconfident or something. And honestly, it was just a huge fun time. And I want to go play it again. Invite friends over and stuff, and it's like a return to form for Mario Party. I'm really glad that they did this.
I would say Super Mario Party got there because they updated it for free and added so much stuff. And I learned that when I saw one of the streams from our friend PJ that he did like high stakes Mario Party streams, and they were really funny.
I remember that now.
So that's when I learned, I was like, oh, they added more, because Super Mario Party was very bare bones when it launched on Switch. And I was surprised that they didn't keep adding, but that's the Nintendo MO. They don't do service games, so they want you to keep buying new versions of games. So I actually went to a friend's apartment. He recently moved to an apartment here, and we played Super Mario Party there. It felt fun being the one that won without ever buying a star. I I just kept stealing.
That's the other fun part, is I realized with how hard it is to get across the map at a certain point, you're better off just stealing a star from somebody else who's got one. Justifiably. The dog is mad that both of us steal stars to win Mario Party.
That was perfect.
Because I absolutely did that, and I came in second, fortunately, by just barely. The husband managed to beat me out right at the end.
Yes.
But the last thing I wanted to mention is that this also has online capabilities, which
does it work? Because in the other one was it seemed to work, because that's how our friend PJ did that. And keep explaining. I'm gonna shut my dog.
I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So as far as I understand for Mario Party Superstars, online you can actually matchmake and play with your friends against other people. So the fact that you can possibly go through this whole thing playing with complete strangers, not really able to do any voice chat, but like you can pull up these emojis, Mario style emojis, that you can pull up like reactions to things happening, and so that we were like spamming different things, and they're customized for each character you pick as well, but for the most part, and it was just really funny messing with each other. And then of course you pull it up and the menu blocks off some of the map, so people were like, get the map, or get your emojis away, I'm trying to look at the map, and they're like, ah! So it was just, we all turned into children as soon as we were playing.
That game will always, like that and Smash, will always make you feel like children. I also played Smash finally again after having played it for a while. At apartments, at a friend's apartment, because those are the only games that if you're by yourself, they're not fun. But if you play with them, they're fun. And I love being Kirby. I love doing the rock 4B. Like everyone's like all gathered here, and I just fly and just drop on them.
Yeah, everyone thinks they can counter it, but you can't counter the down B Kirby. Man, I've been destroyed by that so many times. I want to get together with some friends and play that again. It plays different whenever you're with a bunch of
Absolutely. Like everything that you may hate about them completely goes out the window with how much fun you have collectively together. You've been playing on some older stuff, right, Paul?
Yes. Jumping into the stuff I revisited, of course, we've been playing through Halo 3.
Which, by the way,
a lot.
Today, happy 17th anniversary, Halo 2.
Wow. 17 years.
Since Halo 2.
And then like 20 years for Halo 1, you said, right?
Yeah.
Wow. That's just...
Next Monday. Next Monday is the 20th anniversary of Halo 1. And so sad that Infinite is going to miss that day, but still releasing the same year.
Which, it's nice that at least it matches the year. I'll give it that. I'll briefly touch on a couple other things, and then I'll go into detail. So, of course, playing a little more Insurgency Sandstorm, a game that works amazing with friends. I've gotten like my entire friend that I usually play with on this. So there's all 5 of us plus 3 other people randoms, and because it's VoIP chat, where of course it's proximity, you can hear the other people in your party even though we were in a party, and usually that like cuts it off, but we can just hear them chat back and forth doing stupid stuff, and we were having a rip-roaring time about it. I also started replaying Kingdom Hearts 1. I didn't play too much of it, but I went through the intro, skipped a few of the cutscenes because I'm like, get this out of here. Yeah, I'm on Destiny Islands right now. I very quickly was like, oh no, I need to sit down and be really ready for this, because I was trying to play it while I was doing something else, and I was like, no, this is just not going to be a fun experience if I try to like change. If I try to only play it halfway thinking about it, I'm not going to have any fun, and it's going to ruin Kingdom Hearts for me. I just want to get the Traverse Town because like the song was stuck in my head a while ago. Yeah. No, that is what happens when you graduate.
Yeah, it's kind of similar.
Yeah, basically, you might as well. They're like, good job, you got out of Destiny Island. Congratulations. Here's Donald and Goofy, get out of here. Yeah, so I want to play through Traverse Town because that was such an experience and environment that gave me like a mix of anxiety and very much a calming atmosphere, which I don't know how I could have both of those at the same time, because I felt like I was lost all the time because I was trying to find Donald and Goofy, and I would see them show up in the previous place, so I would leave that area and go back to try to find him, and I couldn't find him.
Yeah, the exploration aspect of Kingdom Hearts 1 early on is so bad. It's so bad. Like sometimes with some weird jumps you need to do in some places to reach where you need to go that it's like doesn't make any sense.
Like you got to get to a certain area to trigger this cutscene before you go to the next area. That kind of stuff. But at the same time, I almost feel like some of it was intentional for Traverse Town because that's the whole idea. Is like
you're traversing.
You're trying to find your way through the city and figure out what the heck is going on. So I'm like, all right, I'll vibe with it. I am glad that in the future they added the quality of life where you can upgrade things like the Kingdom Key because I still think that's one of the coolest keys out there. And I hate walking around with that stupid Peter Pan key. But it was like the strongest one at the time. So
now, quick question: at what point in Kingdom Hearts do you really love that game? Like from the first, one.
We talked about it briefly. So Traverse Town was where I got interested. I was frustrated as hell in Destiny Islands, obviously, and I was like, oh my gosh, Riku just got freaking eaten by darkness. Kairi disappeared. I don't know what's going on. So like when the plot kicked in, I was like, heck yeah. And I felt really bad for Sora's mom because she's like, Sora, dinner's ready, and he's just gone. So I'm thinking like, dude, did his parents just think he's dead? Like what happened? But yeah, so Traverse Town was really where things kicked off because you bumped into Leon, Yuffie, Aerith, and all that. And even though I had never played those games, I recognized them.
I didn't when I played. I was like, oh my god, that didn't register for me when I first played in 2017 this game. Yeah. And to me, like the Alice in Wonderland world, which I think is the first one, if I remember, that's the first one right out of Traverse Town.
Absolute trash.
Yeah, absolute trash. The Tarzan one, slightly better. But still not great.
What happened after Tarzan?
I think it's Aladdin.
Olympus. Oh.
No, Olympus is there, but Olympus is it's just the arena. I think it's Olympus and Aladdin. I really like.
This is where I got really into it.
Yeah, I really like Aladdin one because I really like that movie. The Little Mermaid one, I know people hate because it's a swimming level. I didn't hate it quite, but the Halloween Town from the first game, it's so good. I like the Peter Pan one, even though it's just an in Hook's ship, but I really like the flying afterwards. Yeah. But I feel that game really goes from this is fun to really epic as Hollow Bastion. Yeah. Hollow Bastion, especially when you lose Goofy and Donald because they betray you.
Dude, they straight up are like, oh, you don't have the key anymore.
Yeah, bye. Yeah. But I feel it's because it's the music of Hollow Bastion that sticks with you. It was funny putting that Hollow Bastion music in the Hollow Bastion map from Smash. It's so cool that you can put it there.
I was always surprised, just to briefly get off my own topic, was for Kingdom Hearts 2, the first time I played through it, I didn't finish some of the optional worlds. So I never got Radiant Guard to come back, more or less. I didn't finish the Tron world. And when I went back
you need to finish Tron World to beat the game.
No, there is something else that you have to go back into later on that you fight I don't remember which one you fight. You fight the dude that gets really big, and then I think that's where you finish it. But you can go back and fight the big red screen guy, and I don't know if that was required. I think that was optional.
I would have to replay it. Maybe we can book club.
There was a point that I didn't really finish it, quote unquote. But there was something else I could have done that I didn't. But yeah, I definitely Radiant Garden. I didn't finish that at all. It was still stayed as Hollow Bastion on my screen. The first few times I played through Kingdom Hearts 2, and it wasn't until I went back and was just I'm just gonna keep playing. I think it was actually when I had the 2.5 version that I really wanted to 100% this game as much as I would
have loved to have played the Kingdom Hearts 2 version that you didn't have to fight Roxas, because that fight is.
Wait, did you play the
2.5?
You played the final.
Yeah, the final mix. You fight Roxas in 2.5 final mix. You don't play with him.
I keep forgetting that was the first time you played that series.
Yeah, you don't fight him on just the normal version of 2.
It's a cutscene.
Yeah.
And that's what I went through, and I used to wish that I could fight Roxas because the cutscene was so cool. And I was like, man, would it be awesome to be able to fight this dude? And then they put him into Final Mix, or I found out about Final Mix, and you had to buy like a Japanese PS2, and you had to like do this crazy stuff. And I actually considered it at one point buying that version to be able to play through all the crazy nonsense you could do in Final Mix, because I was like, I wish I could do all this awesome stuff. And sure enough, they let me fight Roxas, and I went, oh no, this is really hard.
No, like everyone says, because the big criticism of PS2 Kingdom Hearts 2 was that it was too easy, like very easy. And it seems that Nomura was like, oh, it was easy, huh? And then he made it really hard. Yeah, I'll teach you something with 2.5 remix. So, and now because that's the more traditional way to play that game now, because you can't buy unless you go through the black market or the super obscure corners of the internet to get that original PS2 version. Now the 2.5 one has that's base Kingdom Hearts 2 now, and because
Which
of all
I
the
now
other
realize how special my Kingdom Hearts 2 copy is, because I have it on PS2. I have the original Kingdom Hearts 1 version as well. I remember drawing the covers from Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and like going through the instruction booklet.
They're so
trying to
evocative.
draw all the stuff.
I love
It's
the art. I freaking
so
love
good.
that art.
Fantastic. So anyway, yeah, I played through that. I'm going to touch briefly on a couple other things. Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition, went back to it. I'm enjoying it a lot more.
Did you put it the right?
because-
Did you put the right graphic settings this time?
Yes, and it plays way better. Oh my gosh. Like, I'm so glad that you mentioned that one of those versions just doesn't work right, because that happened to be the one I picked.
The graphic settings, yeah, it's less. It's more graphics, but less frame rate. Then you prefer more frame rate in that kind of game,
Right, and well, they didn't explain well enough that your frame rate is really going to tank with this. It was just like, oh, we're just going to prioritize the ray tracing and give you a good experience with your frame rate, and it'll be great. And I'm like, cool, let's try that out. And it was horrible. Never do that.
Yeah.
Always do performance. Forget ray tracing. I've given it up on it. So yeah, I enjoyed it a lot more playing through that. Of course, V is frustrating to deal with, and it's kind of funny thinking back on how cringy everything kind of is. And just to briefly touch on how poorly they treat a lot of their female characters in that game and the series in general, because I was like so excited for more of what we get that I wasn't really thinking about it the first few times. But my goodness, the fact that like they've hyped up and shown like how awesome the woman characters from Trish, Lady, and Kyrie doesn't really do anything, but she's more there as the heart anyway. She literally doesn't even show up in the game. You hear her voice like once, and then Lady and Trish are like, yeah, we're off doing demon hunting things, and then they like off screen get captured, turned into demons, and then you save them and they're just naked, and then they don't do anything for the entire rest of the story. And I was like, that's
remember that scene
there.
where who's the character that Dante like jumps with like a naked body with?
Oh, that's Trish.
Trish, right?
Yeah.
And I remember that controversy that in the Xbox One version they did lens flare and you can see her, and then the PlayStation version they lens flare to kind of censor it. Yeah.
I honestly didn't mind it, because I mean, we've talked about my sensibilities of like, you know what, I don't want TNA just right out there in front of me all the time. So if you want to throw a little lens flare in, then I'm fine with it. But I feel like it shouldn't have even been a thing in the first place. Not to mention, if you make the argument, Dante still had all his clothes when they found him, and for whatever reason they had to rip off all the women's clothes. So that's a whole thing in itself. And I've liked the mechanic character a lot more this time. I don't know why, like I used her alternate skin where she doesn't have glasses and she looks better to me, because she used to have such a janky face. And I like the comedy a little bit more here and there, but it's also like, man, this is so juvenile, but it's comfortable for me. Last but not least, I briefly touched on For Honor. I went back to that. It's really fun still. I love that there's enough people still playing all of the modes that really matter.
It's still very vibrant.
Funny enough, you cannot trade it into GameStop because they will not give you any money for it. They literally said like, no, we have no value for this. But I'm like, there's literally like thousands of people playing this game constantly, and they're like, this is like we don't value this.
Didn't they put up another boxed version of that game? Maybe that's why.
Well, they have several expansions now, so I would think there's got to be a version that lets you buy all of those. But I think most of their stuff is probably digital by now, especially if none of these secondhand gaming companies are even getting them back as trade credit. Which, another thing, gaming related, I probably should have mentioned it in the news segment, but I found out that GameStop is trying to do a trade hold on all items brought into them now.
What do you mean trade hold?
So whenever something comes in, usually you can immediately turn around, stick a sticker on it, and sell it back. They now have a 30-day delay where everything that gets traded in has to go to their warehouse first and then come back and get redistributed to be bought. I found out that currently is only really applying to certain locations, and the one that I used to go to is one of those because a police officer found out that, I don't know what it was, somebody complained to a police officer about something getting traded in that wasn't supposed to get traded in. Like, people will sometimes steal things from Best Buy and Target and then trade it in to get money. And some guy found out about that had enough power to change that law in the parish. So, like, the entire region that I live in is getting changed so that you can't trade something in and somebody else can't walk in 5 minutes and buy that thing. Like, it has to go to their location and then come back. So it's like more stuff hitting GameStop. They're taking L's again.
Yeah, but that's the thing. They're taking them in a very quiet way compared to last year.
Apparently very recent and also quieter because nobody knows about it, and I don't think it's really affecting them quite
And
yet.
you know why? And you also know why? Because it's become clear that digital has overtaken now. People don't care.
It's getting up there. I'm still glad I have my physical version because I have so many of these disc games that I love putting back in. I mean, my Resident Evil 2, my Kingdom Hearts.
If I had had some discs from PS4, I would have gone for the PS5 disc version. Because I never did, and the few I did, I traded out to just get digital versions that were $2 to $3. I was like, yeah, you know what? It's like, I don't need that. So,
True.
there's this one game that you haven't mentioned there.
I'm getting there. I had one other thing on For Honor to mention was that they had an entire crossover event with Dead by Daylight, and I got to play it. So it's really funny because it plays out like, I think they call it Dominion, which is their little capture areas or whatever mode, but it's merged with a map that was turned into like a Dead by Daylight area, and instead of zones, it's generators that you have to turn on and hold on to. And periodically, the Trapper, the guy that is like the villain, shows up as an AI who's like super powerful and hunts you down. And like you can't block his attacks. And he's just like a big dude, Jason Voorhees with a machete, and comes through and just starts carving through you and your enemy at the same time. And so both of you are fighting each other, and you have to fight him as well. And there's an entire like pseudo battle pass style thing where you unlock things for free just by playing that mode. So I was like, that's kind of cool that they actually went through all the effort to do that. And For Honor just kills it with their events. From like the Assassin's Creed, the Star
Prince
Wars,
of Persia one, I remember.
Prince of Persia one. They did a couple other, but that's like at least 4 that I can think of off the top of my head. And they put effort into it. Like they put whole skins and change armors. All of the little AI characters that throw themselves at each other in the middle of the fights have completely different skins. Halloween themed. It's awesome. So the last thing I wanted to mention is Uncharted 2. So I've been playing through that with my wife from the beginning. I am really finding it interesting how different it is going back to it from this time, because I played through Uncharted 4 like 3 times and Lost Legacy once in the time that it spent me to go back to the series. And I told you about it, that I'm surprised that it both looks so great still, and that it is very much cartoony. Like it's stylized a lot more than I realized at the time. Like there's an entire concept of anticipation and movements in their motions, and even though it's motion capture, like there's a very specific effort to not make it lifelike, which I respect immensely, because you can't do that easily. Lifelikeness, and if you try to, it just falls apart and doesn't look great. So I think that's why Uncharted as a series still looks so good, is because it's not supposed to be lifelike.
Yeah, I'm still so angry you didn't go through the first one again, especially if you have your
I'm kind of holding to it. I did not like Uncharted 1, and I don't think anything that you gain from it is really worth it. Like I don't remember anything from Uncharted 1 outside of the submarine, fighting the zombies briefly, which took way too much bullets, and the guy that gets absorbed into the El Dorado coffin or whatever, and that was like all I remember.
Yeah, but that's the thing, like you gain a lot from it. It's like 3 works because of 1. You have more relationship with Sully in 1 than you do in 2, and that's what makes you
true, because he kind of disappears out of the story very
quickly. In 2 he's like very brief, like he's there for like 2 missions, then he's out.
Yeah.
Until the very, very end of 2. And then on 1, there's so much on 4 that mirrors 1. That is like a full circle thing. And especially because you have your wife you're having her start in the middle of the story with like no context of when did Drake and Elena have their first adversarial relationship that then they rekindle and then they kind of fell apart and rejoin in 2. So it's like there's so much that, especially like whenever you get to 4, which 4 is the best story, that one resonates more if you had started at the beginning and see the pictures of 1 there.
There's only one picture that you just kind of assume from the eyes of obviously anybody. Spoilers for Uncharted 4, just warning yourself now, click away. The idea behind it is that you're seeing from the eyes of a girl who's never experienced any of that, so she's seeing it all for the first time. You could almost argue that seeing that as a first time as an audience member yourself also adds to the, oh my goodness, what kind of adventures did this guy go on? Because it doesn't just touch on the game's events, but she sees things of stuff that like didn't happen in the games, but she's just understanding the gist of, oh my gosh, these guys like did some crazy nonsense back in the day. And then me personally starting with 2 myself, because I think I told the story that my youth pastor had Uncharted 2 and 3.
That's why I sold you on a PS3 back then.
Right. But he didn't have Uncharted 1 in that group. And so I just put in the first one that was there, and I got everything out of it that I was like, okay, we're right in the middle of everything. Elena, like clearly, like as soon as you meet her, she treats you like she's the ex-girlfriend. But then throughout the plot of 2, you realize she's more important than whatever Chloe is. And I don't know, it felt like a nice circle to me.
Yeah, the first one also has the whole Sir Francis Drake thing. Because then if you're just there, you're just gonna get halfway to the point of why Sir Francis Drake's so important about him being an heir. And then in the first game, he's like all about when he's pretending to be Sir Francis Drake and finding Sir Francis Drake's body and realizing that there was no greatness that he found, he just found death. You start getting that tiny kernel that then he doesn't really focus until again in 3, and then 4 further develops it in 3 ways. So you're still starting in the middle, and the first one is so short. That's the thing, and it's so much better on PS4. On PS3, it's not as good. So
I think I played. When did I play through 1 for the first time?
You would have played it on PS3 if you went back.
Maybe I did, but yeah, I guess so. I did play it on the 3, but I almost want to play through it myself, but like I don't want to subject her to that because it just doesn't resonate with me. And it's like, yeah, you get some like required reading almost, but at a certain point, like how much do you sacrifice by slowing down the plot to understand understand those
Would
kind
you
of things.
start Star Wars with Empire Strikes Back without A New Hope?
I feel like I could make that argument if you really wanted me to. But yeah, but that's the thing, because here's a better argument. Would you watch A New Hope without watching the prequels? Because it explains so much.
Yeah, but here's the thing with those prequels. You watch them with the like with the understanding that you know what's coming next, like you know what's coming up next because of the way they were released. It's why everyone always says that the worst way to watch those Star Wars movies is if you do like chronological order, because a lot of the power of Empire is the reveal. The reveal that puts in your mind, what happened to this guy?
Yeah.
And then the prequels are kind of written that way, knowing that they're leading you towards that.
Right.
So, because that's the thing, like the big thing with Empire is, I am your father. And
Which,
then
I don't know if I like watched them too early, because I never got like the reveal from that. I was just like, I thought he was lying the whole time.
Mm-hmm. But that's the thing,
like,
whether he was lying or not, then Return of the Jedi confirms it.
It does, but that's the crazy thing, that he's just like, this guy was telling the truth the whole time? Because I watched Return of the Jedi way later than Empire Strikes Back.
I've heard this order of like, you do New Hope, you do Empire, and then do the prequels.
The prequels.
And then go to 6. Because like, you know how TV does that flashback, those flashbacks of here's how all of this happened after this big reveal. So I did it once, like, this is very interesting doing it that way. But yeah, it's again like, Drake's fortune is just establishing the base, establishing you to care about the characters, to further develops it, and has so many inside references to the camera's busted anyway, and all of that are things from the first game. I'm last year's model. Like all of that is like things that if you play the first one, it's like, I get it. And it just makes 3 and 4 resonate even more with the whole Sir Francis Drake thing when you see the original adventure trying to find Sir Francis Drake.
That's the only thing I'll concede, because it does give a good point of reference whenever he starts off trying to find Sir Francis Drake's treasure, and then it kind of falls away into almost like an unrelated adventure, but like the character work is there. That's why I almost thought it was such a good entry point for everything. But then
it really was, but
I don't want to. I'm afraid that I've gone too far into the plot of 2.
How far are you?
After we finished, we got back to where the train was. And
you're halfway point.
Yeah. So we've like got into the point of like no return, at least for the second one. The question would be, do I go back to 1 between this and 3? But
make it a further flashback. Make it a further flashback.
Like, I don't know if I want to go back even further, because like even then the lighting kind of struggles on the 5. Just like you said, where I was having to really mess with like the brightness settings, and even now I have it set all the way up on the brightness, just so that everyone's eyes aren't like pitch black, and like Drake's hair was like fully black as well, and it's just like the lighting wasn't doing it for me. So I'm like, at least if we get to 3 and then on to 4, I just want her to experience 4 and get away from like the datedness of all this, because I never want her to like get to this point of like, okay, this is just like I'm getting lost, because she's so far removed from the gaming scene that I don't want her to be like, all right, this is.
It's why I said that the best way to experience the first one, put it in the very, 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 very easy difficulty, and just blast through it. Yeah, and then just to kind of have that, just to have that base, especially for her watching. So
I'm gonna consider it, because if I get through the highs, it's 2. Part of me really wants to go through 3.
I'll say this:
really want 3.
2, ironically,